Hey guys, Keyiter here. As I already had a few mechanics that I can use, I started last week's development with some level design. With things that I implemented last time, it was natural to make players start with at least one follower ghost, but I didn't want to. I wanted to make the first one or two puzzles with fun followers. The problem resolved itself when I tried to design the first puzzle. The way that I implemented doors had a minor concept problem. When you open the door, one of your followers will need to stay in the trigger zone, otherwise you won't be able to go further. Don't get me wrong, it's a good mechanic, but it's used mostly when you leave something that you won't need in the future. In order to use this in almost every level, I would have to make the player rescue tons of follower ghosts just to leave them behind 10 seconds later. I could avoid that by keeping the door open after the activation, but on the other hand, I also wanted to have doors that are closed shortly after stepping out of the triggered zone. So the problem with this approach is that it would make one triggered zone have two different effects, and I think that you really shouldn't change rules in the middle of puzzle game. So I changed the concept a bit. What if there is no door that is opened or closed? What if there is something else that blocks the path? Like, for example, a crate that can be broken when something gets activated. The concept was good, and since I already considered a plant-based game, I made trigger zones a flower that blooms when the player gets nearby. The bloomed flower is growing vines and roots in a certain place. If the vines encounter an obstacle, in this example, a crate, it will push it and eventually crash it on the opposite wall. With this solution, I killed two birds with one stone, as I could use it for a mini puzzles while rescuing other ghosts. The ghosts were kidnapped, so they should be imprisoned in cages, but standard cages are boring. And since objects other than ghosts are affected by gravity, I made the cages hang on chains. The cage will break on contact with hard objects like the ground, so if you want to rescue a ghost, you need to break the chain. And in order to achieve it, you will often need to solve a little puzzle based on blooming flowers in the correct order. Going back to puzzle design, there are a few factors that have to be met in order to make a good puzzle game. Looking at other puzzles, like for example Portal, you can clearly see that they are usually divided into levels. Despite not seeing that at first glance, the levels are actually connected. When a new mechanic is introduced, it usually teaches you how to use it in a simple introduction to the level. Then the mechanics are used in more complex levels, but when there is a new mechanic or old mechanics are used in different ways, it always is introduced in a simple situation. The game is too easy for your players, your levels are probably repeatable or monotonous. And if it's too hard, you probably didn't teach the mechanics good enough. So let's assume you already teach mechanics to a player and you want to make a level where you use everything that your player knows. If an average player enters the room and immediately knows what to do, the level is probably too easy. On the other hand, they should not be placed in a position where they don't even know how to start. So most puzzles in games are built around this concept. The player, upon entering the room, immediately thinks that they have a solution for the puzzle. As they solve it, they discover that something is missing, that the solution is not correct. Then they have to come up with another one. The actual solution should be simple, but not simple enough to be seen at the first glance. The player should have that moment when they are like, oh, so that's the answer. A good example would be a puzzle where the first thing that the player does in the puzzle actually blocks the solution. The player then has to think about a different way of approaching it, and when they finally solve it, they will have that rewarding oh moment. There is one last thing that is important in puzzle design. If a step is not important for solving a puzzle, then it's just an extra work that the player needs to do. This step or steps should not be excluded from the actual puzzle. If there are 5 buttons that the player just has to press, and there might as well be just one, that means those additional steps are simply not necessary here. So I have translated all that knowledge and got a scenario when the game is split into separate levels and levels are divided into rooms. Currently I have completely designed one level with about 7 rooms, but I won't show it to you because I don't want to spoil the fun of building it yourself. So that's it for today. Hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and see you again in another week.